I am here with Austin right now. Austin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a semi-common visitor to the Norman game stores and write D&D content mostly for fun, but I've been putting it up on DM's Guild lately. I've been involved in a game development company that I started in, 2016. Uh, on and off based on how much free time I have since then.
That's Artisan Nerds, right?
That's Artisan Nerds, yes. It's the one with the D20 jug logo. Don't go to our website. I haven't updated it recently.
I think you have a Facebook page, though, right? Do you have a Facebook
We
page?
we do. We don't use it much, but we do have it. And if you post something there, I'll get a notification and I'll respond. So
But
um,
absolutely do not go to your website.
do not. The website. It's bad. It's not good. I need to update it, but hasn't been a priority until we get some more games worked out.
Right, because Artisan Nerds is like tabletop stuff, but you also do video game design and other types of design as well, right? So.
Yeah, that's me personally. I
Mhm.
don't do that under the Artisan Nerds name. Although if I ever wanted to publish like a book or a video game, I would probably set that up so that it does have the Artisan Nerds name. I just haven't gotten far enough in development to do something like that.
You're one of the few people I know who does video game design, tabletop design, and also board game design. What are the commonalities you notice and what are the real differences?
So the tabletop and board game ones are actually not that dissimilar. You have a task and then you write the rules so people know how to resolve it, and then you kind of fit that into the framework of a greater game, and that works out pretty similarly for like RPGs and for board games. The difference is that for tabletop RPGs, it's a lot more open ended. You don't have to have everything set in stone and just guidelines. It's more guidelines than hard rules. Whereas for board games, you need to know if I do this, this is going to happen, and so it's a lot more specific. Video games are a bit different. You're still trying to do the same thing, but where writing the rules for someone to resolve the result of a rolled die takes 5-10 minutes maybe. With the video games, you have to do that, and then you have to tell the computer to roll the die, and you have to tell the computer to store the dice thing. So it takes longer. It takes longer to set up, was my experience. Although once you've set up a couple of them, you can use that same framework, and it gets faster as you iterate down in the video game design.
So at its
So
core, there's a difference between what the game has to do and what the player has to do, kind of weighted.
right, yeah, and with the board games, they're one and the same. I mean, the player is the operator of the board game.
What's your favorite thing to develop?
I really enjoy developing RPG mechanics, and that goes for tabletop RPGs and video games both. But I do more of the tabletop RPG ones just because you have to have a lot more supporting framework for the video game ones. But I like thinking about how character development happens and how they learn new skills or gain new powers and how they improve their old ones. I like thinking about stuff like that. That's my favorite part.
I know you do a lot of the D&D contests where they challenge you to do like a specific class, or do they do races too, or is it mostly classes? I forget.
They probably have some race ones. I mostly do the class ones. I'm actually on the forums for the Order of the Stick webcomic, Giant in the Playground forums. I'm actually operating two contests for 5th edition. And when I say operating, I just make the new threads and sometimes I have to rule on a border case about whether something is within the rules that the forum uses. So I'm operating a base class contest there and a subclass contest there, and have been for the subclass contest. I started a couple years ago. The base class contest I took over from the last person last summer.
I know you do a lot of those contests, so do you think that that's changed the way that you approach your tabletop design in any way?
To an extent, yeah. I think a lot more about what the players are doing in terms of meaningful choice and just kind of turn to turn what their options are. Because if you're doing the same thing every turn because it's the best option all the time, that's boring. It's a boring game, and I think about that more now that I've done a lot of, especially the base class design. Because it also makes a boring D&D class if you're just attacking every single turn. No one likes champion fighter.
What projects are you currently working on in terms of like video games and board games?
So my board games I haven't worked on in the last couple months. I had some personal stuff come up in the fall, and I haven't really built up the momentum to get started on those again. But I am working on a farming style game for my video game project. I'm using Godot is the game development software I'm using for that. I just kind of wanted to experiment with the different game development softwares because I'm eternally curious, and so I needed a new project for that. And so we were playing Stardew Valley at the time. I've started working on not really a knockoff of that. It's more menu based and less space based, but that's been the last couple months what I've been working on, and I've got it to where the game will save its current state, and that's about where I'm at on that. And I've also been, the contests are ever present, so I did a juggler subclass for the rogue recently, and I'm working on an update of the D&D 3rd edition Totemist class into 5th edition for the base class contest.
Do you think contests kind of help self-motivate to get things done? Because, like, since you're working for yourself, you don't really have a deadline.
Contests absolutely help. I have deadlines for those. They have clear ideas, themes. So, I mean, the current contest theme was updating old classes into a new edition. I had one a few months back where it was create a monster as a class. It helps. It gives me direction and a timeline, and I work better under those.
So you need to just create a bunch of contests for yourself.
Yeah, I need to create I need other people around to it needs to be visible. If I just create a contest for myself and don't tell anybody about it, then there's no shame in not finishing it.
So I know some of your D&D material you actually started selling online, and I know that those have been selling for you. Do you have anything to say about that or any advice for someone who might want to try that?
Formatting. Formatting is everything. Make it look nice. Find a good cover image. DM's Guild is the website that has the license to sell fan-produced content. They have some art available for creators that you can use freely for stuff hosted there, but not elsewhere. Use it, and if you have a complete idea and it's formatted and the language is good, then you're set. You should take this with a grain of salt. I've had a lot of downloads, but not a lot of purchases because it's pay what you want.
Yeah, downloads are still good. I mean, I think presentation is really important, and it's 10% of what you do, but it is about 80% of what people actually see.
Yeah.
I know that you recently started getting into paid DMing on Roll20. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and your experience with that?
I would love to. I haven't actually had my first session yet. That's scheduled for this time next week. But it's interesting. Roll20 allows you to create paid games through whatever method of payment you want to use. No questions asked. So I set up a Patreon. You don't need prior approval or anything, and I'm going to try something. I see a lot of the paid games on there. I kind of poked through. A lot of them charge per month. Some of them charge per session. Some of them are optional tips. I'm going to try something a little different. I'm not going to charge anything for the game itself, or even ask for tips for the game itself. What I'm going to do is I have a world that I'm kind of fleshing out, and I set up a Patreon, and I'm going to post background information on the world and microfiction of what the adventuring party is getting up to on that Patreon. So hopefully that will make it so that people who aren't in the game can sign up and see what's going on, and it can be interesting for them also. But it's going to be a couple more weeks before we really know how that works, because, like I said, first session's a week from today.
Do you have any prior experience with Patreon? I know I've heard some mixed things from people.
Not as a creator. I have seen some Patreons for comics I read, and I have backed them intermittently. I think it works for what it does, but you need to. It doesn't have a lot of built-in promotion. You kind of have to promote on your own with it.
Have you noticed people playing more D&D lately?
Yes, Roll20 has actually crashed a couple times from server load, and when I was putting my game up there were dozens of newly created games, paid, unpaid, everything. It seems like there's a lot of people stuck at home who have started looking for ways to play online.
Do you think they'll stick with the games after the pandemic is through?
I think some of them will. Once you've got a game started, it's a lot easier to keep playing it than it is to actually start a game. And I think some of them are pretty upfront. Most of them are pretty upfront. This is just, we're going to do this one adventure, and then we're done. And I think if they're still bored and stuck at home after they finish that adventure, they'll probably start a new one adventure and then done, and they can kind of push that out. Some of them will fall off. It's just the nature of online D&D. I played a lot of forum-based games like 10 years ago, I guess. Wow. It's a long time. That, some of them make it 2 weeks, some of them lasted for years. It just happens.
How long do you think that your game's going to last?
I plan to run a complete story every other week for 3 or 4 months, and then kind of see how I'm doing for consistent players, and whether I've got anyone reading my microfiction, and if I think I'm getting interest but not advertising enough, I'll probably push it on social media a little bit and create a new story in the same setting. I want to keep using the setting for a lot of different projects. I haven't ever really built a long-term setting like this before. I always just kind of build it to the adventure's needs. I kind of want to have fun designing my own worlds. So
I actually think the way that you're approaching it is really brilliant, because people get invested in the world. Obviously, they're going to want to buy more content about the world that they've been in, and the world.
Yeah, and if it goes really well, I can create like setting books for other DMs to use, explaining the different regions, and optimism. But it's something I'm considering as a possible end result of this.
Yeah, and that touches upon the project that we were working on before this, which was the persistent world. Do you want to talk
Yes.
a little bit about that? Because that's a little bit complicated.
So I guess how much do you want to introduce yourself? Because it was partly your idea.
No, I want to force you to introduce all of it.
Okay. So what it was is when Common Space was planning to open sooner before everything shut down, I was going to be a DM there every week, and I was going to set up a persistent game.
You're talking in past tense a lot. We are hoping this is still going to happen.
Yes, I have started. Actually, I'm using the same setting for this as I'm doing for the Roll20. So I'm using that to kind of flesh out the setting. So will. I will DM a game once a week. Players can drop in or drop out, but the setting is going to continue to evolve and exist whether players are there or not, and their characters are going to continue to do stuff whether their players are there or not. And how it's going to work is there's going to be a big map. Have you printed the map yet, or?
I have not.
Yeah. Well, once you have shop space that people can see is when that becomes.
Yeah, like once people can physically enter into our space is when that becomes more urgent.
A big map of this city where the adventures are going to primarily take place in and around this city. And on it are going to be a number of rumors of stuff that's happening in the world. And with the help of Common Space's staff and managers, you can leave notes about what you want your character to do. And then I'll come in once a week. I'll run. One of the rumors will be labeled as the next adventure to run, and I'll run people through that adventure. And then I will take in all the notes about what everyone wanted their characters to be up to that week, and I will update the rumor board. So the city will continue to develop based on what people do in character, both during a session and when they can't make a session. And I think it's going to be a really interesting, kind of fun, ongoing thing once we get it up and running.
Someone's asking about West Marches. It is almost exactly like a West Marches campaign. It's just in a unique setting, and in a space that's continuous. I'm really excited about that. Hopefully someday it will actually happen.
Yeah, if they stop letting people get sick.
Yes, if they stop letting that happen.
Yeah.
Are there any game developers in particular that you really love and that you follow?
I do keep up. I don't really follow any of them, but there are some that when they post something new and I think, oh, that looks like an interesting project, and I see they've done it, I'm much more excited about that. Slugfest Games is one that I have that feeling about. They're the makers of Red Dragon Inn. Evil Hat, the makers of Fate. And of course, I like to keep up with all our local ones, so Absurdist Productions and Mixed Company. I like to keep up with them when I can. I'm not great at social media, so if I don't see them in person, it's a little harder. But yeah, I don't really follow anyone strictly other than that.
I love Red Dragon Inn, but there's so many expansions for that game.
Yes, you can see the giant box behind me. I have most of them.
Oh God, I do see that now.
Yeah. I am missing, I think, 3 of the small box sets.
Are there any specific game mechanics that you really like?
There are, and I can't think of them right now. I like the clear card mechanic from Mystic Vale. It's unique to them. I can't imagine what they had to go through finding a printer for it. I really like that kind of thing where it really stands out as something that's only for that. That's my probably my favorite individual mechanic.
I'm trying to think back on a lot of the games that you've developed, and they always seem kind of radically different in terms of how their mechanics run.
I am a bit of an experimenter, yes. So the whole thing started. We had someday we'll finish this game, I swear.
Is that Contraption? Because I know that Contraption is the one game that you actually have up.
It was not Contraption. The
Really?
first one we had was our Princess game. We had a regular D&D session that ran for a few years, and one week there were only 4 people who could make it out of, I think we had 7 players. So we decided not to actually run D&D that week, and we just sat around brainstorming, and we came up with some really bizarre ideas. There was a board game without a board, but it does have a plank. We couldn't make anything out of that. But one of them was the idea that in a medieval, like fairy tale society, the players are princesses who want to rule the kingdom, but they have to marry into the royal line to do that. They have to marry the prince, and the prince is an idiot.
Okay.
With just he's fickle and whimsical and an idiot, and so he's the goal of the game was you had to get the approval of your family on the marriage, and then you have to actually get the prince to agree to it. And it was a resource management game, and it got really out of hand with the number of resources really quickly.
This is not
So we
something
had
a game that has to be that in depth.
yeah, we had to we've made a couple attempts to strip that down to the bare essentials, but nothing has come back out as complete for that yet. And then while we were working on that, Kelsey, my partner's brother, asked if we were going to make any simple games. And I was like, I could probably try and put something like that together. And so we did. We put together Contraption in, I think it took us about 2 months all told to get it print ready, start to finish. And that's the only one that we've printed. We've had some other ones that are close to ready. But yeah, every time I start a new game, I'd like to try a new mechanic. So you'll see that whenever I come in, I have something different,
What do
unless
you
it's
think
a
you
new
learned from
version of an
taking
old game.
Contraption from the very beginning to the end?
Hmm?
What do you think you learned from taking Contraption from the very beginning to the end, when actually getting it to print?
Well, we self-printed that, and I kind of regret not going the Kickstarter route for it. I learned that I can make pretty okay icon art, but that I should get an actual artist to make the cards look nice. And having a goal for gameplay ease of access is actually easier to make a game around than it seemed like it would be.
Do you think
It
that
wasn't a
scope
strong
creep
idea.
ends up being a problem?
Hmm?
Do you think that scope creep ends up being a problem?
Absolutely, for me. I actually start big and whittle down. I know that that's not the best way to go about it.
It is a way.
It is a way. So I throw everything into a game that I think will work at all with it, and then I take it to the table the first time, and people don't engage with entire mechanics or don't understand how something works because it's so different from the other stuff, and then I cut that, and then if I play it long enough, it usually ends up at a workable state. I've only had one game where I had to add something in after the fact. That was Wizard's Tower. I had to. It was too simple on its face.
Now, I remember testing quite thoroughly Run Jump Fight, and it seemed like it was almost done.
Yes, the problem with Run Jump Fight is
And do you want to describe kind of what Run Jump Fight is?
sure. Run Jump Fight is a game in the style of a classic platformer where you have a level and the level has a start and you move to the right, always to the right, to get to the end. Then you fight a boss and you go to the next level. And the goal is you and several other people are doing this at the same time, and you're trying to come out with the most coins. Um, and the mechanic for it, we went through a couple. The first one was hidden bid, and that was a problem because once the level was revealed and you knew what the random layout of the level was, you always could choose the best result. So then we went to a die mechanic where there's two axes and you can choose one axis and then you roll to get the other axis. And that was a little better, but there was still a definitive best option on a lot of cards. So we went and made a pass through that. And the most recent play was at a workable stage. We just wanted to add a little bit more player interaction. The power-ups were all just for the user, and we just wanted more variety before we took that to finish. And that was probably last August or September that we started trying to do that. And I started, because I like to experiment with different systems, I started looking at building a variant of the same theme where it was like a deck builder style. But I still want to go through and smooth out the parts of the dice-based game that needed help.
I know that the game developers group was running a lot of playtests. Is there anything that you've learned about playtesting, ways to make it, more useful to you?
So having specific questions helps. A lot of the playtesters are very supportive and optimistic people, and so they won't give you criticism, which you sometimes need, unless you're like, hey, I'm concerned about this mechanic, how could I make it better? And obviously the other game developers are a little more willing to offer suggestions unbidden, because they're all in the same boat. But that probably the specific questions, and then know what you want your game to be. You can't go in with a game and not have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish and learn anything by playtesting.
I know that earlier you mentioned that you wish that you had gone with Kickstarter for your first contraption, rather.
Yeah.
Do you still think that that's a really viable path? Like, I know that a lot of people have been seeing Kickstarter kind of go downhill for a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's more than a way to raise money to print a game. It's about exposure, and artists hate it, and I guess I'm kind of in an art sort of way now. And yeah, exposure without money is meaningless. But if you have something and you can sell it, and people don't know about it to buy it, it doesn't do you any good. And that's what we ran into with Contraption. It was, we were a new company. Nobody really knew who we were as a company. I mean, they knew us personally, but we couldn't get any notice online for sales or anything like that. And I think having a Kickstarter really draws in a lot of visibility, where people are like, hey, this looks cool, I want to back it. And then, you sell some stuff and people are more aware of it after that.
So basically a vessel for marketing, because marketing is really what a lot of small companies struggle with, is trying getting their name out there.
Yeah, it's for me, that's what it would be. At least as much as it is about raising money for printing costs, because you can do small batch printing. You print 100 units, 1,000 units. You can usually find that in a budget somewhere, especially if you're working outside of the company in addition to running the company, like most of our developers are. You can save up for that if you need to get a batch printed, but without sales on that batch, it doesn't help.
Whatever happened to the Tribble game? Could you not get the despair meter up high enough, or?
Actually, the despair meter was working. The triple game I was ready to start making it look nice when, well, like I said, I had some personal stuff in the fall, and then we're all in quarantine now. So I'll have to break that out for when quarantine gets lifted and we can come down to the common space physical location with it.
There are probably ways to test some of those games online. I know that so many people are playing board games online right now. Like, Matt's been playing board games online almost any night, and the platforms have been crashing because there's so many people.
Yeah. The challenge there is that, especially with a game like that, where it's got it doesn't use normal game pieces, right? We have the cotton puffs and special boards, and so there are sources that I could host it on, but I'd have to do a little coding to make the game work.
Yeah. For simpler games, like just card games, I've noticed a lot of people are just producing print and plays right now and gaining traction through that.
I haven't been keeping up with that. Mm-hmm. That actually sounds like a really effective way to get your game out there right now.
Right, just because, I mean, everyone's stuck at home and...
Yeah, and we do, basically, most of our stuff is print and play. We just print it ourselves and bring it in card sleeves.
So I'm just giving you a new project that you need
more
to take a look at.
That's what I need.
Right. Is there anything else that you want to discuss? Anything else you want to talk about? Any new projects you want to promote?
Not at the moment. Right now, we're just trying to get back in the saddle as far as getting our old projects on the working table again. The persistent game, I'm really looking forward to setting up the big map and putting the rumors out. And I'll have, I guess, the Patreon. I'll start having some microfiction up on that. Probably next Thursday, I'll have the first one up. The first lore entry went up last week. If D&D players want to check out some homebrew, I can personally vouch for it because I wrote it. I'm on DM's Guilds under Austin Miller. I can probably get a link through somehow.
Yeah, we'll get a link somewhere.
Figure that out. Yeah, I'll send you a link. But other than that, I guess I should get my website running again.
You should probably eventually get your website running again, yeah. But I think I feel like a lot of people are kind of in a limbo state right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because everyone was like, I wish I had time for my projects, and we have time for projects now, but there's also, a pervasive sense of panic and unease, so...
Yeah, and I had time for projects, but I'm not working on the right ones.
Are you working on the wrong ones? What are the wrong projects that you're working on, Austin?
I made new projects, I've made a new RPG system. I've been working on the video games thing instead of any of the board games that I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, the video game projects are good too. People are at home playing a lot of video games as well.
It's true. I've had a lot of time for that also.
Just finish something in about a week, and everyone will be playing it. You have a deadline now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I can finish anything in a week.
I think you can. I think you can finish something very, very small.
That's true.
The Game Jam showed this. You can finish at least something very small.
Something very small. We'll see what I can do.
Or a print and play. I'm going to give you a lot of options. All right. I think we're done here. I think Matt is going to be streaming again tomorrow at 7. I have no idea what he's streaming, but he will be here. Seeing if maybe he'll tell me what he's streaming. I have no idea. He just says thanks. He did not tell me what he's streaming, so that doesn't help me at all.
All right.
All right, Austin. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. I don't really do this much streaming, so it's kind of a new New
But
experience.
this is fantastic. If there's just, you know, a show that's just an introvert interviewing another introvert, and we just make that work somehow.
Yeah, there's probably a market for that. Introverts would watch that. As long as they don't have to engage
from their
with it.
homes, yes. All right. Have a good night, Austin.
Thanks, everyone else. Have a good night.